Welcome back to the Bourbon Retriever. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be talking about basically if money was not an option, what whiskey would I love to try? There are some wild balls on this list, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So I haven't had any of the bottles on this list because of rarity and also the price of a lot of these bottles. So I don't know if these would actually be the 10 best whiskeys in the world, and they're probably, to be honest, aren't the best 10 whiskeys. These are just the whiskeys that if I had the money to be able to try them, they are the ones I would go for. But also, the vast history of bourbon is pretty expansive. So I'm sure some of the best bourbon out there has just been lost to history and time, and we'll just probably never know about it. But please leave in the comments below what would be your number one rye bourbon whiskey that you would go out and try if money was not an option, because I would love to learn more about this space. I'm sure there are plenty of whiskeys out there that I don't even know about that would probably be worth it. So the 10 whiskeys are in no particular order here. The points don't matter. One doesn't mean anything different than 10. It's just kind of the order I have them down here to talk through them. But the first one we're going to jump into is Michter's 25, the celebration release. I am in love with the Michter's 20. I think it might be the best whiskey I have ever had. So the 25 has got a lot more hype behind it besides the 20. So given how much I love the 20, it would just make sense that the 25 might be worth it if I did have the money to buy it. And I've heard nothing but the best things about this whiskey. From the few people who have been able to try it, they've only said great things. But it was a very limited release. I want to say maybe there was like 400 bottles of it. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but there was not a lot of them out there. And the MSRP on it was not cheap, $1,800. The secondary on it is way higher than that. It's not even close to that $1,800. That would be considered a steal at the prices these are going at on secondary. The other cool thing about this whiskey is that it's coming in at 118 proof. Rarely do you find ultra-aged whiskeys that are above 100 proof, let alone getting close to that 118 proof point, because a lot of times they need to water these down just for flavor-wise to get the oak tannin down a little bit. And the other reason is they can get more bottles out of it. But to see these ultra-aged whiskeys at those higher proof is another reason that this is a bottle that I would love to try. The second bottle on our list today is a bottle that's commonly referred to as the Weller Gold Vein bottles. And that is because the bottle itself, the squatty bottle, there are little gold lines that go out throughout the bottle. And that's just what it's commonly recognized as. And the reason I would love to try these bottles is because this is old Stitzel-Weller juice. This is what put Pappy on the map back in the day. Those ultra aged Pappies, those are old Stitzel-Weller products. So I would love to try a Stitzel-Weller product. These Weller Gold Veins, they look really cool. I love the bottle of them. And they also have heard great things about them. And for me personally, I am a big fan of the Weller 107. If I could find this more regularly, it would be my daily drinker. It's just this is very hard to find. So given how much I love the current version of Weller 107. I would love to taste what it used to be back in the day when it got its big fame. Now, before we move on to the next bottle on this list, if you're enjoying this content, hit the subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of my future videos. In addition, I was looking at some of the data and I noticed that roughly 77% of the people who actively watch this channel are not subscribed. And if only a fraction of you hit the subscribe button, it would put me well on my way to hitting my goal of 5,000 subs for this channel. That is a big milestone for this channel. So if you enjoy this content, please hit the subscribe button. And if for whatever reason over time, if you're no longer enjoying the content, feel free to hit the unsubscribe button. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I put this out to try be entertaining and information for you guys out there. And if for whatever reason it's not fulfilling that need anymore, feel free to unsubscribe. Now, the third bottle on our list isn't necessarily one bottle. It's kind of more of an idea. I would love to do a sampling in one sitting of different whiskeys from the different time periods of bourbon history. Everything from when bourbon was first made in America using new charred oak barrels through the different times in history when they started mixing weird things in the whiskey, things that were not healthy. I would not want those because I appreciate my health. But if I could try some of the other ones during that time period that didn't have those horrible things in them. That's the big reason they had the Curly H. Taylor did the Bottle and Bond Act, was to try and get a lot of those impurities out of whiskey. And you could trust when you see that type of labels on it that you're getting pure bourbon. And then everything up to like the Prohibition era, trying to taste things right before a ton of the stills in America went down. A bunch of brands that are just, again, lost to history. It'd be amazing to be able to try a bunch of stuff from that time period. And then some things like right after the Prohibition, how did it taste afterwards? I think there probably were some barrels left over from pre-prohibition, but just to taste how was different afterwards than everything up to today. I think it'd be a really cool lineup just to try the whiskey from every time period, compare them to each other, and just see what the differences are. I bet you a lot of the whiskey from a bygone era probably wasn't that good, especially the era when they were mixing things in it that was not good for your health. But I think it'd still be cool just to connect to what the people were drinking back then, and get yourself like kind of in their shoes. And I just think it'd be a really cool experience to do something like that. The fourth bottle on this list today, I might get a little flack because it is not a bourbon, and it is the Booker's Rye. This is revered as potentially one of the best ryes that was ever made. And the sad thing is they can't recreate it. They did not save the mash bill used into this rye. It is long gone to history. So it's definitely one I want to try because it is not easily replicable. They could probably make a bunch of different batches and maybe they'll be able to hit it again. But without having the knowledge of how it was made, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to. So before that stuff disappears, it's definitely one that I personally want to try. Now, the fifth bottle that is on this list, it is on this list solely because it is the most expensive bourbon ever sold at auction, and it is the Benny's 18-year pick, the Van Winkle. This went for like roughly $107,000, which is just mind-blowing to pay for a bottle of whiskey. But this thing has some great stats on it. 18-year-old Van Winkle, those are normally 12 years old. In addition, I think they said this is the second highest Van Winkle that's ever been released, the second highest proof. Not sure what the first one was, but having the second highest one is also really cool. And then also just the rarity of it. They only had about 100 bottles of this pick. It is a single barrel. There's only so much whiskey that can go in a barrel, and then how much of it is lost to industry over time. And during that time period, when these were coming out, people were opening bottles. Like collecting bottles was not a thing back then. So everyone that got these probably opened them almost instantaneously. So there really aren't many, if any, left of these today. And I'm assuming if it's the most expensive bourbon ever sold at auction, that it probably tastes okay. That's not always true. Sometimes people just spend money for the rarity. So I have no idea if this Van Winkle is actually any good. But when you have unlimited resources, why not go out and buy the most expensive whiskey? So that is why this one is on the list. Now, the sixth bottle on this list is coming from a distillery we have not talked about yet, and it is the Al Young 50th anniversary from Four Roses. This has gotten a lot of hype, potentially the best Four Roses they have ever released. It is a celebration of one of their what was his title? He was senior ambassador for Four Roses, its 50th anniversary. So they wanted to commemorate that. There is old blends in this whiskey. I wrote down wait, I don't say what they are. It is 12-year OBSF, 13-year OESV, 15-year OBSK, and then a 23-year OBSV. That is some old whiskey going in there, that 23 years old. And the proof point is also 107.6, it looks like. Again, this is a whiskey that's gotten probably the most hype coming out of the Four Roses distillery. It came out before I personally got into bourbon, so I wasn't able to try it. And it's one I especially want to try because I would love to try each of the top releases from each of these distilleries, because that way when a new release comes out, I can give it a benchmark against that one when I'm giving you guys reviews. It just helps me give a more well-balanced review when I can have a more plethora of whiskeys from the distillery and then also try the ones that are the quote unquote, the best stuff they've ever released. It. So the seventh bottle that's coming in on our list is probably the coolest container, and it is the most hyped dusty out there, and it is the Chessmen whiskey. These are 10-year-old 86 proof whiskeys, so those stats alone don't say anything that crazy. But Fred Minnick came out and said this is the best whiskey he has ever had. And he is a big name in whiskey. His opinions carry a lot of weight in the community. So I would love to try these to confirm, do I agree that this is the best whiskey that I've ever had, let alone maybe the best dusty. They also are really cool. You can collect them all because you used to be able to use them to like play chess on a chessboard. You could have gotten all the different pieces or different colors and could have played a little game. They even had a little rug or whatever that you could put them on. But that's what they had to do during that time period to try and move whiskey. No one was buying it. So the only way they could really buy it was, or sell it, was to be able to put it in these different packagings. You've seen a lot of these decanters, trying to target different, I guess, demographics or interest. So this is another one. They made a whole chessboard, I guess, for the chess enthusiast to go out and get. And I'd also just love to have one on the shelf here. Even the Pons, I think it's just a cool looking decanter, and it would just be a really pretty bottle to have. Now, the eighth bottle on this list is coming from another distiller we have not talked about yet. And it's probably maybe the one that I would be most interested in trying, just because this is kind of a very similar resurrection to what is probably my current favorite whiskey that is currently being released every year, and it is the Jack Daniel's age-dated products. Specifically, I would love to try the Jack Daniel's 21 year, or alternatively, the Jack Daniel's 18 year. Those are the two age-dated Jack Daniels that they haven't been able to replicate yet. They had the 10, the 12, the 14, which Jack Daniel's has now redone. It will be a little bit until we can try the 18 or 21, because the current oldest whiskey Jack Daniel's has is 15 years. So we got at least another 3 years so until that could be released. However, they are doing it to taste. So maybe when it gets to that 18 years old, it's not quite up to par. So we might never see it. But I guess taking a step back and telling you about the history, these were age-dated products back in the day for the Jack Daniel's distillery. It was the oldest whiskey that Jack Daniel's had ever released, and now Jack Daniel's is trying to recreate that lineup for themselves. And I personally think that Jack Daniel's 12 is some of the best whiskey that's coming out right now, especially Batch 1. Batch 1 was phenomenal. I'm a little concerned, though, with the 18 and the 21, because I thought the Jack Daniel's 14 was starting to get to the point of a little bit of bitterness in the oak, and that is only a 14-year-old product. So I can only imagine what another 4 or 7 years would do to it. Who knows what proof point they'll come out yet. Maybe part of the reason that bitterness is the Jack 14 is at barrel proof. So maybe if it's watered down a little bit, some of that bitterness would go away. Okay, coming in at number 9 on this list is more of a local play, and it would be to be able to try some of the old Maryland rye that was distilled prior to Prohibition. In this local area around Maryland and even up to Pennsylvania, they were well known for producing some of the best rye whiskey in the United States. However, after Prohibition came into effect, all of those distilleries went defunct because only a very few, I think 6 or so, got medicinal licenses. So these distilleries were not able to produce and stay afloat during Prohibition. And as a result, they mostly all went away, and they have not come back since then. So I would just love to be able to taste that part of history, just because I live in this area, and it'd be really cool to, again, connect with what people in this area were drinking back in the day, and just to see how it is. There's been a lot of hype with those ryes. People say they were the best in America, but who knows who has really tasted them since they went out at Prohibition. So I think it'd just be cool, even if they don't taste good, just to connect with that time period and the people who lived in the same area I did. I think it'd be really cool. Coming in at number 10, rounding out the list here, is the Old Rip 25. This is the oldest release from the Old Rip Happy lineup. And there were only like 710 or so bottles released from this set. So it's definitely one I want to try, because it is, again, the oldest they ever released. And I don't know if we're going to be able to see older releases going forward because of the flood that was at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. All these ultra-aged products are all on the first floor of these warehouses. because that is where you're going to get the least amount of interaction between the whiskey and the wood from the temperatures. It's the coldest down there, so you're not going to have as much. And the first floors were the ones that got just devastated by the flooding in Frankfurt. And I'm worried a lot of those barrels got contaminated and they might have had to get rid of them. I don't know if you've seen recently, but they did just drop Eagle Rare 30 label. And I wonder if this was a result of the flood. They needed to maybe dump these quickly so they don't get contaminated from the wood. Like, they might have been sealed tight so none of the river sewage water got into the whiskey, but if they let it sit there in the barrel and let it interact with the contaminated wood more, it might have maybe contaminated it, and it wouldn't be tasting well in the future. So this is probably maybe something they had to dump now to try and get out and market because of the flood. This is all speculation. This is not me. I don't know information, but with that label coming out almost immediately after the flooding, it made me kind of think of that. But with my concern of the potential flood effect on the distillery, I would love to try some of these old whiskeys coming out of the Buffalo Trace Distillery, even though I think these are actually Stitzel juice. These are not Buffalo Trace juice. It's just aged there. So I would love to try these ultra aged products from a bygone era. So that's my list of the 10 bottles I would love to try if money was not an option. But again, leave a comment below what would be your top bottle to try if you had unlimited resources. But if you're enjoying this content, again, before you head out, hit the subscribe button. That way you don't miss any future videos. And check out this video here before you head out. And until next time, cheers.